Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great America Show. It's great to have you with us today. President Trump's first week in office has been probably one of the most successful starts to a presidency, second presidency, let alone in modern history. For those of you who have been around longer than me, you may have seen Ronald Reagan doing something similar. But I think what President Trump is doing in his first week in office, first few days, and even his first 24 hours you can look at as a time period, is absolutely monumental. Among some of the things he's done, pardons for the January 6ers who so deserve them, announcing yesterday he's going to be declassifying the MLK and the JFK assassination files. In just a few moments, we're going to be joined by a man who knows all too much about it, the great Roger Stone, one of our weekly guests here on the Great America Show. Among some of the other executive orders, President Trump has designated the cartels as terrorist organizations. Folks, the New York Times, as you can imagine, is really not happy about it. They're losing their minds. Out with an editorial this week titled, "How Labeling the Terrorist Cartels Could Hurt the U.S. Economy." This isn't a joke, folks. This is from the New York Times. Quote, "Isolating U.S. companies from cartel activities could be almost impossible given the criminal groups operate in sectors like agriculture and tourism, leaving some American businesses vulnerable to sanctions." Folks, can you imagine that the New York Times is going to preach to us and coach us on sanctions from the drug cartels? Is this a joke? It hasn't, like I said, been a week since President Trump has been back in office, but these people are certainly starting to lose their minds. CNN, another one, laying off 200 people. CNN's best bet would be to lay off every single person there, liquidate the place, shut it down, and sell the assets they have remaining. And take the money from there, because nobody will ever trust them again for the deception that they've done to us over the last 10 years, even going back further than that. President Trump's immigration policy also hitting its first snag, as expected. One of President Trump's first executive order was to end the birthright citizenship, which is pretty much illegals coming over here having a kid, and that kid being a U.S. citizen, also referred to often as an anchor baby. A federal judge this week put a temporary block on Donald Trump's to attempt to block that restricted birthright citizenship. The ruling imposes a 14-day halt on the enforcement, and one of the most controversial executive orders from President Trump that we've seen. The U.S. District Judge John Couganar says this is blatantly unconstitutional. Imagine that. A judge, as we often see in this country, defending the illegals. Truly an embarrassment for this country. An embarrassment for the rule of law. It's also looking like Pete Hegseth is moving one step closer to becoming our next Secretary of Defense. Three rhinos signaling they may not vote for him, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski among two of them that we often see on the list. So, folks, as promised, our guest today is the great Roger Stone, a man who knows all too much about JFK, MLK, and the body politic of current and of past. Roger, it's great to have you back with us on the Great America Show. I hope you had fun at the inauguration. I hope you weren't too cold. I want to start with the news of the day, perhaps the news of the week, perhaps the news of the century for some, especially if you're a Kennedy family member. Roger authored a book, a New York Times bestseller some time ago, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. We find out today President Trump is declassifying, we'll start with first the JFK files, but the MLK files and a whole slew of other files. Maybe we're waiting for the Epstein ones as well. Those in my lifetime, I'm waiting for. Let's start with the JFK files, Roger. What do we expect to come out in those? What can you tell us that all of us regular people who don't know about the case can learn?
Well, as you know, John, the Congress passed a law back in the 70s that set a date for the release of all the classified JFK assassination documents. Right. And that year was 2017. President Donald Trump had to make that decision. Early in his presidency, I brought that to his attention, and strangely, no one on his staff had told him that that decision was imminent. In other words, the documents would be released unless the president moved affirmatively to block their release. He actually said, "Are you sure about that?" And I said, "Yes." I read him the law, and he said, "I'll get back to you on it." A couple of days later, he called me back and he said, "Well, you're absolutely right. what do you think I should do? And I said, you should release everything. It's been more than 50 years. It's time for the American people to know everything about the JFK assassination. In the end, he made a decision to release about 80% of the material, but he held back 20%. And when I asked him why, he told me at the time, which he actually said last night to Sean Hannity, that Mike Pompeo, then the head of the CIA, convinced him to hold back a small portion of the material. The material he did release told us an enormous amount. For example, there you will find the 1099 for Lee Harvey Oswald from the FBI, meaning Lee Harvey Oswald was on the FBI payroll.
Why?
Wait a minute. They told us that they had no knowledge of Lee Harvey Oswald. We found Lyndon Baines Johnson's original application to be a member of the Ku Klux Klan when he was in the U.S. House of Representatives. That was in the released material. We found a memo from J. Edgar Hoover, then the head of the FBI, to Lyndon Johnson saying the Russians have, according to our sources, conducted their own investigation into the Kennedy assassination. And their conclusion, Mr. President, is that you were the ringleader of the assassination. We've learned in the documents that Trump has already released that French intelligence had conducted their own investigation at the request of Jacqueline Kennedy into the Kennedy assassination. And they too had concluded that Lyndon Johnson was a major player. So what's going on here? The real answer is that John F. Kennedy was killed on the basis of a conspiracy that included a number of entities. Yes, the Central Intelligence Agency was deeply involved in the Kennedy assassination. So was organized crime. So was Big Texas Oil. So were the international banks. And frankly, Israel also has a major motive here. And there is evidence of Mossad involvement. Kennedy was opposed to Israel being allowed to own nuclear weapons. Kennedy was also insisting that AIPAC register as a foreign agent within the United States, which they were resisting. So everybody here has their own individual motive for the murder of Kennedy, but nobody's motive is more intense than Lyndon Johnson. That's because he's facing two criminal investigations by Attorney General Robert Kennedy, one into the Bobby Baker scandal. Baker was the Secretary of the Senate and Johnson's right-hand man, essentially his bag man, and the other one into Billy Sol Estes, who was a flamboyant Texas wheeler dealer. Now, John, just last week, a man named Sean Stevens released an audio tape that he got from his grandfather, which is a recording of a conversation between a man named Cliff Carter, the executive director of the Democrat National Committee during Johnson's presidency, and Billy Sol Estes, in which Carter says that Lyndon Johnson hired a man named Malcolm Mac Wallace to kill John Kennedy, which has also been memorialized in Billy Sol Estes' book written in 2004. So what we're going to find in these documents is the final involvement of the Central Intelligence Agency. That is what Pompeo was so anxious to cover up, and that's what's going to be indisputable when these documents are released. By the way, Robert Kennedy knows this. He has said it. Robert Kennedy Jr. Has said this. He knows it. He cites a terrific book, JFK, The Unspoken by Jim Douglas. Douglas's book is completely consistent with mine. Again, I'm not arguing that Johnson did this alone. What I am arguing is that he is the linchpin of the entire assassination. If you want more details, you can get my book at stonezone.com in the store. If you choose to buy it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, in other words, if you want to give your money to a multinational corporation that hates your guts, well, then buy the paperback version because it has 3 extra chapters. Don't buy the hardcover.
So there's so much to unpack there. I want to start with first the declassification process. Now, once it does get declassified, presumably in the next few days or so, which it should be declassified right away because there's nothing to redact. There's nothing. It's like the most simple thing, Roger, declassified all. Do you believe if it were, which I happen to believe, I know you happen to believe, I know the great Lou Dobbs happened to believe that the CIA had a heavy involvement, if not total involvement in it, that would be something that would be in the files? Or is that something that could maybe be concealed under some sort of prospect of somebody else doing it on behalf of the CIA that wouldn't come up in the declassification file?
I think it's going to be hard. I think, first of all, we've got 80% of the stories already out there. Anybody looks at the documents that have already been released will reach the conclusion that the Central Intelligence Agency is well aware of who Lee Harvey Oswald is. Oswald is exactly who he says he is. Remember, he's trotted out in public and he says, "I'm a patsy.
Right.
I didn't shoot anybody." And here's the point. You can understand this, John. Why does he have no powder burns on his chest or his arm? Right. Why are there no nitrates on him? Right. They want us to believe that he fired a $26 leaky World War II vintage Italian carbine, but he has no powder burns according to the tests conducted by the Dallas Police Department.
Yeah.
Could not possibly have shot a gun that day. That's only one of the holes in the story. But I think it'll be very hard for them to conceal the final pieces of evidence that the Central Intelligence Agency is involved in the Kennedy assassination, which means that parts of the American government were involved in the death, the murder of an American president. This is what Pompeo was so desperate to cover up. And I think we're now going to see it definitively in these final documents. I would put it in reverse. Why did Pompeo fight so furiously to hold these documents back if there's nothing in them of public interest?
You know, there's two things here that I got to go through. The presence of gunpowder would be on anybody, whether you shot up. I think if you even shot one of those cap guns back in the day, you'd have some sort of gunpowder on you. The fact that you'd shoot a rifle of that caliber and have nothing on you is mind-blowing to me. Everyone who watched the murder trial of Alex Murdaugh, the guy who murdered his whole family in South Carolina, there was gunpowder everywhere. It's clothes, everywhere you could possibly think of. It's the easiest thing to find. The other thing, now I don't want to go down a conspiracy theory hole here, or a rabbit hole, but do you think if Trump were to declassify it his first time around and Pompeo didn't block it, right? And we know now, confirmed, you and I both know, but now it's confirmed on documentation to the public that the CIA did play a role and the government did assassinate a sitting president. Do you believe there would be those two assassination attempts on President Trump?
It would make them a lot more obvious. And that, I think, goes to the larger question here. President Trump has spoken about a commission that would investigate the murder of JFK, the murder of his brother, Senator Robert Kennedy, who was killed on the night of the California primary in 1968, which he won. Kennedy had been picked up on a wiretap. Kennedy had said to a student audience, I believe it was at USC, that if he was elected president, he would reopen the investigation into his brother's death. Right. I think that triggered his assassination. The assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. We know that J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI had a wiretap on Dr. King. We know they picked up the conversation that King was preparing to endorse Robert Kennedy for the 1968 Democrat nomination. That would have meant the reopening of the investigation, which is what Johnson and a number of his cronies within and outside government involved deeply feared. So I think that both the assassination of Senator Kennedy and Dr. King were sparked by those wiretaps and by those statements. But beyond that, it's important that people know that Dr. King's family filed a civil suit against the Memphis police, the FBI, the Secret Service, and the federal government over the murder of Dr. King, and they won, which means a federal judge ruled in a civil case that the federal government was involved in the murder of Dr. King. Now, this idea of a commission that would study the JFK murder, the RFK murder, the King murder, should also have the authority to study the attempted assassination on President Ronald Reagan, because the American people have not been told the entire truth about that either, as well as the 2 assassination attempts against Donald Trump, the one in Butler, Pennsylvania, also one in West Palm Beach.
Right.
People will not remember this, but there were also assassination attempts against President Richard Nixon in Miami. Yep. President Jimmy Carter, a Puerto Rican nationalist, attempted to kill him. And there was an assassination attempt against President Gerald Ford. That was attributed to a member of the Manson family. And it may, in fact, be benign. It may not be connected to these others, but it should be subject to this commission. And I don't know that he's going to have time, because I think he's going to get confirmed as the head of HHS. But Robert Kennedy would be the ideal person to chair such a commission. If not him, I think some other non-deep state actor should be tapped. But I hope the president goes through with his idea of appointing a commission to study all of these. There's little doubt in my mind that we haven't been told the truth about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. Yep. And now with a new FBI director and a new Secret Service director and a new attorney general, perhaps we can finally get to the truth of who tried to kill Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think Kash Patel is going to do a hell of a job. I know Kash very well as the FBI director. Kash has said so many things on television, on radio shows, on podcasts, where if he doesn't, I mean, he's said many times he wants to shut down the FBI, he wants to re-gut it, he wants to revamp it. He said far too many times, too many things that I don't think he has a choice to do a good job. Now, I'm not, undermining what he's going to do. I believe he's going to do an excellent job. But the crazy thing to me, Roger, it's over 61 years since JFK was assassinated. And the parallels you can draw between Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump 61 years later now, it smells of high heavens. Now, they were successful on one of them, and successful, I mean the government failed on Ronald Reagan, failed on Donald Trump, and the parallels between Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump, I don't believe in coincidences, Roger. But there's far too many consistencies between the character, the temperament, the past lifestyles of Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan down to the assassination attempt for this to be a coincidence. It's got the government's handwriting, in my opinion, all over it. And you can go down a laundry list, Roger, of people who'd want to kill Trump. I mean, all the way down to Hillary Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein, deep staters, Iran. I mean, go down the list of people who'd want to kill him. There's plenty of them. So the government, the other thing, too, that I thought was so strange is after the failed assassination attempt, the government comes out and says, oh, well, it just so happens I think Iran is trying to kill Trump. And then you heard maybe it was Russia trying to get him. And you're like, all right, guys, come on, man. This is like the January 6th government informants in the Capitol. Like, you think we're going to fall for this banana in the tailpipe again? We're talking with Roger Stone, folks. Go out and get Roger's books. You can go to stonezone.com, get your copy of on Roger's book on JFK. We encourage you all. He may even sign it for you, and get yourself a Roger Stone when you're there as well. We're coming right back with Roger Stone. Stay with us.
Just like all of you, I had problems sleeping. I had tried every pillow out there and nothing worked. I'd flip-flop all night, use my arm for support and fall asleep, or I'd wake up with a sore neck or maybe a headache. Well, quality sleep comes from keeping your neck straight at night. You have to fill in that space between your head and your bed. That's why I invented My Pillow. My Pillow's patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it doesn't matter if you sleep on your back, stomach, side, or any combination of all three.
When I got My Pillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night, and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get Classic King My Pillows for only $19.98. Queen size just $18.98. Standard Classic My Pillows only $14.98. That's right, only $14.98. Plus all orders $75 or more ship absolutely free.
Folks, we're back with the great Roger Stone. Thanks so much for staying with us. Roger, I've got some more good news to report. Mike Pompeo was among the few gentlemen whose security detail was pulled from him, along with John Bolton and Mr. Brian Hook, one of Trump's envoys. I couldn't think of a better way to President Trump to start his administration. You've got deportations, raids happening all across America right now. You've got him pulling John Bolton and Mike Pompeo security clearances and going after all these people who are just bad people. This isn't retribution, Roger. This is truth, justice, in the American way. What's your thoughts?
I think it is rebalancing the scales of justice. There is a fundamental problem, and I'm not an attorney, so I don't have the answer. But even if theoretically, for example, you could charge John Brennan, who I think is the mastermind of the Russian collusion hoax. He is the one who goes to the English-speaking nations, the so-called Five Eyes, and has them begin surveillance on 26 associates of Trump, including myself, and start spying on us. He is the one who comes up with the entire Russian collusion fraud. Even if you could get him charged in the District of Columbia, in all honesty, there is not a non-political, unbiased judge on the court in D.C., and you will never, under any circumstances, get a reasonable, unbiased jury there. I can tell you all about this firsthand. So those who are saying, oh, Trump is going to go on a war of retribution and revenge. No, I don't think so. Yeah. On the other hand, this is not up to me. This is up to Pam Bondi, hopefully, the incoming attorney general, and a grand jury. I think, first of all, I have the highest possible regard for Pam Bondi because I live in Florida. Right. I saw the job she did as attorney general here. And I think she's an individual who'll go where the facts lead her. And if she finds enough facts to present to a grand jury, well, then I think some of those involved in the unconstitutional efforts to undermine President Trump could face consequences. John, the Russian collusion hoax is the biggest dirty trick in American political history. It is nothing less than an abuse of power in which the full authority of the United States government and the incredible capabilities of our intelligence agencies were weaponized using what they knew was fraudulent, fabricated evidence, the Steele dossier, and the false claim that the Democrat National Committee had been the subject of an online hack by the Russians, of which there is no evidence whatsoever. We believe it because John Brennan said it, but no one has ever presented any forensic proof that that was the case. And when my lawyers in my trial sought that information, it was denied to them by the judge. And the government furiously responded that they had proof, but they couldn't produce it because it was classified. That's because they have no proof. That's because it never happened. In fact, the forensic evidence supplied to my lawyers by former CIA counterterrorism expert Bill Binney proved that whatever data was stolen from the DNC was downloaded to a portable drive by someone and taken out the back door. The download times of the information prove that the DNC was not the subject of an online hack. Now, we were told repeatedly that CrowdStrikes, a left-leaning Democrat IT firm, had been allowed to inspect the DNC computer servers, which the FBI admitted in my trial they'd never even looked at, and that their memo included proof of this so-called Russian hack. The problem with that is that Sean Henry, the head of CrowdStrikes, testified under oath before the House Intelligence Committee and admitted that he had no proof whatsoever of a Russian hack, which is why the judge withheld that document from us. It would have proved nothing of the kind. In fact, it would have made their whole narrative against me collapse. You can't be charged with lying about Russian collusion that never actually happened now, can you?
Yeah. It's one of the things that the Democrats, ran in their playbook. And you thought that this election, they would have gotten smarter. They tried to run a 2016 playbook, but it was like 2016 light. They were in this battle of trying to get rid of Joe Biden and then bring in Kamala. And then the party was in total shambles. And I'd love to see it because it was the first time in my lifetime I got to see the Democrats fighting within the party. It's usually the Republicans that are fighting with each other. Thinking back to Kevin McCarthy, the most recent battle for the speakership. It's crazy. I see all over the place the Marxist leftists on Twitter going nuts that President Trump's out for retribution. And I see someone tweeting the other day, he had to pardon Anthony Fauci and Mark Milley President Trump was going to go after his political enemies. And I said to this guy, what do you mean like in 2016? Who did President Trump go after in 2016? Who were his political enemies that he went to go jail? The last I checked is President Trump went soft on Hillary Clinton and let her go. So what basis do you have that President Trump has ever done retribution? What's your basis that President Trump will ever do retribution? Anthony Fauci deserves to be called in for questioning for what he did. Mark Milley deserves to be called in for questioning for what he did. These aren't innocent bystanders, Roger. These aren't just people standing on the street corner. Liz Cheney deserves to be called in, if not by the Bar Association, by Congress for witness tampering, for evidence tampering. I mean, you go down the list of all these people, Roger, and the left says they're innocent. They did absolutely nothing wrong. What world are they living in?
That's like watching a watermelon head himself, a pencil-necked Adam Schiff, saying that Kash Patel is a conspiracy theorist. Wait a minute. So the guy who claimed that he saw more than circumstantial evidence of Russian collusion with the Trump campaign, but was never able to produce an iota of that, says that Kash Patel is a conspiracy theorist? And right. No, Senator, let's stop right now. Stop saying that a high-level Trump campaign official was sharing polling information with a Russian intelligence asset. That is a lie. The person you're talking about is Paul Manafort. At the time that he's accused of doing this, the Trump campaign has no proprietary, therefore secret, polling information. So any polling information Manafort passed on would have been public information that you could find on the internet. And the man he passed it to, Konstantin Kilimnik, is a U.S. intelligence asset, as the independent journalist Matt Taibbi has absolutely proven. So millions of dollars later, pencil neck, that's what you have? You have nothing whatsoever. But we do know that only weeks ago, John, the Inspector General of the Biden Justice Department came forward with a report that said that Adam Schiff and his sidekick, Eric Swalwell, leaked confidential, classified information to the media. And the FBI knew that, but they haven't been prosecuted. Now, Adam Schiff has a pardon. When Trump preemptively when he pardoned me, for example, Schiff said, oh, well, that's proof of guilt. You have to accept a pardon. I accepted mine quite simply because I knew that even if I could bring an appeal in the District of Columbia, I'd be facing a stacked court again. There was very little chance of winning. But Senator, if you've done nothing wrong, just don't accept the pardon from Joe Biden. Decline the pardon because he has to sign on the dotted line. If you're not guilty and you're confident of that, don't accept the pardon. Right. Or tell us why you're not accepting it.
You're exactly right. You know, the thing, we often talk about this on the show, about the sharing of polling data. I have a lot of friends who are not born in America. I have a lot of friends overseas and in different countries. Roger, what crime is it? Even if he did share internal polling data, what is the importance of internal polling that would make it illegal to share it with somebody? I mean, that's something I'm not getting. I'm not saying it's right or wrong to do it, but what is the illegality of it, of doing it?
There is no illegality of it. But the problem here for them is after spending millions of dollars on the illicit Mueller investigation, not to mention the House Intelligence Committee under the Democrats, they come up empty-handed. So they make up two false factoids. That's one of them. The other one was Donald Trump Jr. met with a Russian lawyer offering help and intelligence in the election. They don't mention that Russian lawyer was working for Fusion GPS, and she was briefed and debriefed before and after her meeting with Donald Trump Jr. and others, in which that topic never came up. So they have nothing to show. There is no Russian collusion. It's a fraud. They're busted. But here's the thing about the American left, and you see it particularly on the question of January 6th. It doesn't matter how debunked, discredited, or disproved any of their crazy left-wing conspiracy theories are, they just keep repeating them over and over and over again. For example, you saw Merrick Garland. When it comes to corruption, Merrick Garland makes John Mitchell look like St. Thomas Aquinas. This guy is so incredibly corrupt. He says 5 police officers died on January 6th. Sorry, Mr. Attorney General, that's a lie. no, the only two people who died on January 6th were two Trump supporters who were brutally murdered by Capitol Hill police officers, who then got a medal for those murders. Yep. Ashley Babbitt, a decorated Air Force veteran who is unarmed, who is menacing no one, is shot and killed, and this is key, without warning. And Michael Byrd, the police officer who shot and killed her, gets a medal for that. Roseanne Boyland is literally bludgeoned to death by a Capitol police officer, Lila Morris, and she gets a medal for that cold-blooded murder. No, I'm sorry. We have to have justice in these matters. Their false narrative about January 6th is falling apart, but they still keep trying to prop it up. Oh, Trump has pardoned all these violent criminals. Really? Joe Biden and Barack Obama charged nobody in the BLM Antifa riots that burned down a third of the country, in which numerous people were killed and injured, but charges were brought against no one. That's the two-tier justice system.
Yep. It's truly remarkable, the things that we've seen happen in this government. But I think this time around, President Trump is holding back no punches. I mentioned before Mike Pompeo losing his clearance, John Bolton at Numbskull. The other one, John Brennan. I mean, I can't believe that Trump didn't pull his thing the first time and let him have a security clearance. Brennan goes out on MSNBC after Trump pulls it, and he goes, you know what? It's fine. I don't need that anyway. It's the government's loss. The only reason I still have my security clearance is because if a president called me and needed advice, I can help them on security issues. Buddy, there's nobody calling you ever for advice. Let's just be honest about it. It's truly remarkable. Roger, I want to take one more quick break here. When we come back, I want to take up these FBI raids. It's truly a blessing that we're finally going to have truth, justice, in the American way in this country. We're coming right back with Roger Stone. Stay with us.
This past year has been one of the hardest in MyPillow's history. It's because of you that we're making it through. My employees and I want to thank you for your continued support by extending our wholesale prices on classic MyPillows. Get standard classic MyPillows only $14.98. I can't believe I'm even saying that. Only $14.98. But it gets even better. Upgrade to a queen size MyPillow for just $18.98. King size only $1 more. Get my body pillows $29.98 and multi-use MyPillows for only $9.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of these wholesale prices, including my standard size MyPillow, originally $49.98, now only $14.98. Queens $18.98, Kings only $1 more. Not only that, order $75 or more, ship absolutely free.
From all of us here at MyPillow,
thanks America!
Folks, we're back. We're talking with the great Roger Stone, our weekly guest here on the Great America Show. It's always a delight to have you with us, Roger. Roger, 2 weeks ago, not even 2 weeks ago, I lied. A week ago, the FBI was going after school board parents and investigating domestic terrorists. Like domestic terrorists, by that I mean parents who don't want men in women's bathrooms, things like that. You fast forward now, a few days after President Trump was inaugurated back for the White House, the FBI is finally back to doing their jobs. They're raiding the law offices of immigration lawyers, the workplaces, the homes. Tom Homan says we've had over 400 immigrants arrested and detained, criminal immigrants, people who are here on crimes. Your thoughts as we now have an FBI, Roger, that is doing their job for the first time, it seems, in 10 years.
I really have great belief that America is about to enter a golden age of peace, prosperity, security, and justice. There's a couple people here I have huge confidence in. Tom Homan is one of them.
Yep.
He's exactly the right guy for this job. And the day before the inauguration, I posted on Twitter, snow today, ice, all caps, tomorrow. And I think it may be the most liked thing I have ever posted. He is a tough, no-nonsense guy. He's got a difficult job. But President Dwight Eisenhower deported 1.3 million illegals in the first 2 years of his presidency. Right. It can be done, and it will be done. Deporting all 20 plus million who are here illegally, that may be a difficult task, but why not prioritize this? In other words, I think what they're doing is very smart. If you have a criminal record in this country or in the country of origin from which you came, you get priority in terms of being deported. Let's get the violent criminals and the terrorists, and we can identify some of them, out of the country first. This process has begun. Donald Trump and Tom Homan make an unbeatable team. Under the leadership of President Trump, we're going to make the country safer again. We have a long way to go, but he's off to a very, very strong start.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone would be opposed to this. I have a friend I saw posted something on Instagram, and it read this: ICE raids are happening right now in downtown Seattle. Everyone be safe and know your rights, with a link to knowing your rights. And I said, I replied back to him, LFG, get them out of here. I mean, these are criminals. Why would anyone be against it? This Democrat replies back to me, this is a friend of mine. I still hope the best for you and your family. I have enough empathy for both of us. What does that even mean? Why would any American, Roger, be against getting a criminal out of your damn neighborhood? A drug dealer, a gangbanger, someone who's coming for your family. It seems to me like so unreal. And these are the same people, Roger, when they see these gangbangers walking down the street, they run the other way and they put their head down. Meanwhile, the next day they're out there defending them on social media. It's mind-blowing to me why anyone would want to live among not just illegals, but criminal illegals who are there to do harm to you and your family. It's so mindless to me. Has society got this stupid, Roger?
Well, I mean, you examine Joe Biden's pardons.
Right.
Some of this makes no sense to me. Why is he pardoning hardened criminals who have shown no remorse, by the way, vicious criminals, murderers, no notice to the families of their victims? Who's approving these people for pardons? They don't appear to have a political motive other than an ideological motive. Why would you pardon and release hardened, vicious murderers on the American public? What is the point of this? Now, take the case of the Chinese national who had a giant stash of kiddie porn. Right. He got pardoned. Well, that's probably because somebody in the Biden crime family got paid. But Joe Biden assured us he wasn't going to pardon his son. He did. Yep. He assured us he wasn't going to pardon his family, pardoned his entire family. Right. This isn't to shield them from retribution. This is because the House Oversight Committee in the House Republican majority has uncovered indisputable proof that Joe Biden and members of his family were taking payoffs from China, from Russia, from Ukraine, from Romania, from Ukraine, and so on. This is, without any question, the single most corrupt administration in American history. And Joe Biden leaves town with the legacy of being the worst president the country's ever had. That is indisputable. I still believe that the plan was not to run Kamala Harris. I still believe the plan was to dump Joe, to force Joe out, which Joe is still to this day, when he's lucid, still very bitter about. And his wife is still extremely bitter about. And then they were hoping to go to an open convention, which they could stampede for Michelle Obama. I predicted this. I believe that effort was made. This is what explains the gap between the time that Joe Biden dropped and Kamala Harris locked up that nomination. You notice that in that time period, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama did not endorse Kamala Harris. Joe Biden, to pay them back, I think endorsed Kamala. That was kind of his FU to the Obamas. But I think in that period, they were seeking an open convention that could have been stampeded for Michelle. Now, here's an interesting statistic. More than 60% of the delegates to that convention were people of color, which is not a reflection, of course, of the percentage that they would constitute in the United States. And really, right. 3 union leaders controlled 2/3 of the delegates. So I think there was a backstage effort to get Michelle to run. I think she simply refused. The nomination fell to the worst possible candidate, Kamala Harris.
Maybe second worst. Actually, I can't even say, in my opinion, I think, and a lot of pollsters say this, that Biden would have done better against Trump. wouldn't have beat him. And this is Mark Mitchell, one of the most brilliant pollsters in this country. John McLaughlin, another one, that he would have fared better. Now, he wouldn't have beat Trump, but would have done better than Kamala. And that tells you, I mean, a lot. If the American people were to be more in favor of Joe Biden. I see this funny meme on Twitter, Joe Biden, and it depicts him perfectly, walking down the stairs of Air Force One for the last time, trips and falls down the stairs, and money comes pouring out of his pockets everywhere, because he's the most corrupt man to ever serve in this country as president, maybe the most corrupt man to ever be in Washington, D.C. I don't think there's anyone that comes in a close second to that. While we're on the topic of corrupt politicians, I know one you're not very fond of, but some people are falling for it, and it's Eric Adams in New York. Clearly looking for a pardon, begging for a pardon from Donald Trump, going to the inauguration, skipping MLK Day. Did an interview with Tucker Carlson this last week and said pretty much he cried to Joe Biden for help for the illegal immigrants in New York as he gave them housing, and said Joe Biden told them, be a good Democrat and let them stay. What's your thoughts? Does Trump ultimately pardon Eric Adams, you think?
Well, I certainly hope not, because Eric Adams is trying to rewrite history. Look, he ran for mayor of New York as a full-throated supporter of New York being a sanctuary city. He is on videotape multiple times saying illegals will always be welcome in New York City. He located these homeless shelters, these homeless migrant shelters, in stable working class neighborhoods. For example, in Staten Island, he put one of these migrant homeless shelters next to a Catholic girls' school. Yeah. So he's trying to reinvent history. Now, suddenly, Eric Adams is deeply concerned about how the January 6th detainees were treated. Funny, he didn't say anything 4 years ago when it happened, not a word. Now, suddenly, Eric Adams is concerned that parents who go to school board meetings to protest the curriculum being forced on their children are being called domestic terrorists. Now, suddenly, that bothers Eric Adams. Never bothered him before. And I'm tired of Republicans telling me that the charges against him are trivial.
Yeah.
It's not like he got bumped up from coach to first class on Turkish Airlines and he got an extra Bloody Mary. No. Read the indictment. By the way, you can go to stonezone.com. I have a story up there right now that explains to you why he will never be MAGA, why he's reinventing history. He took $100,000 from Turkey. In return, he let the Turks inhabit a building in Manhattan without an occupancy and a fire protection permit, which would have cost them millions of dollars upgrades in the building to obtain. Yeah. Then he gave that money to straw donors who were Americans, New Yorkers, and they submitted it to the city's campaign finance matching fund program. So he took illegal money, violation of federal law, and laundered it, violation of state and federal law, and then got it matched on an 8-to-1 basis, violation of state law and fraud upon the taxpayers. These are not trivial charges. And yes, he's trying to suddenly reposition himself. He actually says in his interview with Tucker Carlson, he didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left him. Really, in what regard? Because he was a supporter of open borders. His only complaint with Joe Biden's open borders policy was that Biden wouldn't give him the millions of dollars to pay for the problem that they had created. Eric Adams is a fraud. He's not a moderate. He ran as a moderate, but he's not a moderate. And if you'll read my piece at stonezone.com, I think I also have it up at my Substack, which is The Stone Cold Truth, you will see that I post the entire indictment there. Read the indictment for yourself. I saw Kat Timpf saying on Gutfeld that this was like he took an upgrade on an airline. No, the charges against him are far more criminal. By the way, he also has 2 sexual harassment cases pending against him, which New York City is illegally paying to defend him in. His police commissioner, his fire commissioner, his chancellor of schools, all either on their way to prison or on their way to indictment. This guy is without any question the best dressed mayor since Jimmy Walker, the most corrupt mayor since William O'Dwyer, the most incompetent mayor since Bill de Blasio, and the shortest mayor since Abe Beame.
Roger, I'm just thinking of this as you're running through the level of corruption. And you're right, he is the best dressed man. I've never seen a mayor or a politician wearing Ferragamo shoes, Rolex watches, golden cufflinks. You're a stylish man. The bar between the shirt and the tie, I don't know what it's called. But very, very true. It only makes me think, can you imagine if Eric Adams and Joe Biden ran on the same ticket and had like Hunter Biden as chief of staff? Can you imagine the corruption that would be spewing through and through? It's truly remarkable. Before we wrap up, I want to turn to a few things. By the way, John Ratcliffe being voted in as CIA director, so it'll be good to see him get to work. Hopefully he doesn't take the deep state route and does a good job. We're praying for him. Godspeed ahead for him. Before we get to January 6th, I want to wrap up with that and get your thoughts on that, these pardons and these January 6th informants and some other folks who are still waiting to be pardoned. I want to turn to Marco Rubio, who's taken over. We're talking about Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State. Marco Rubio, the first to be confirmed, 99-0, taking over. He's heading down to Panama to figure out what's going down there, to see if we can get the Panama Canal back. What's your thoughts on Marco Rubio? I know all of us from 2016, we didn't like him. Short man, small hands, the whole 2016 thing. Do you think Marco's turned the corner? Is Marco capable of being an America firster as Secretary of State?
Yes, I think he is. I think, look, I like Marco Rubio. He's been very helpful to my family, particularly when my wife was stricken by cancer. He's an excellent U.S. senator in terms of constituent services. I think he's been very, very good in this hemisphere in terms of being a hardline anti-communist when it comes to Venezuela and Cuba. I think he has a great personal rapport with the president. But here's the thing. He knows who's in charge. He knows this isn't his foreign policy. This is Donald Trump's foreign policy. I think he'll be very loyal to the president. I think he's going to end up being a very good Secretary of State. So I think he's up to the job. The situation in Panama is obvious. They're in violation of the agreement under which we turned over control of the canal to the Panamanian government. Today, they're in violation of that agreement, and therefore we have the legal right to take it back, and we should. We must. Right now, the Panama Canal is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. We didn't agree to give it to China. We agreed to give it to Panama. But the Panamanian government is now a puppet government of the Chinese. And this is obvious that this could be both a commercial and a national security choke point. So The great Ronald Reagan was right when he said, we built it, we paid for it, and it's ours. Frankly, it's time to take it back.
There's so many things, Roger. We could spend hours talking. Obviously, we have in the past. There's so many things that are just, you've been around this game way longer than I have, but I've been around long enough to see what goes on in the history of things. To think that, Roger, it's taken a quarter century, a century, a half a century. Any timeline you can break it down, you can look from 2008 on, you can look from George Bush 2000 on to 2004. So many little things that we had no idea about, you knew about, but that were going on, that could have been done, that should have been done, that haven't been done. And it's taken Donald Trump to come along and say, now he's obviously not the first person who wanted to buy Greenland, but he, I think, is the first person who's going to be able to buy Greenland 24 years, 25 years now after the Panama Canal, after we've turned over control of it, for someone to come and say, well, you know what? China's probably going to do some bad actor stuff. And they've been doing it now for years, 10, 20 years, China. So it's nothing new, but it's taken Donald Trump to come along and say, enough is enough. We've had enough of this. Before we wrap up, Roger, I want to turn to January 6th. Over 1,500 people pardoned. There's still some behind. I still have so many questions about January 6th. I'm sure you do. Those federal informants who were there, how many of them were actually there? How many of them broke the law? I want those folks to be charged just as those other ones, those January 6ers who were overcharged, were charged. Your thoughts, as we now still have some January 6ers behind bars that we're trying to get out.
Yeah, there's one case I want to bring people's attention to, and then I do unfortunately have to go because, John, I could talk to you for another hour, and I think we keep our audience. That is the case of Jeremy Brown. This guy is a master sergeant, served his country with honor and distinction. They have used legal dirty tricks and a fraudulent search of his home in Florida simply because he was approached by the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI about being an informant. They wanted to plant him within one of the groups on January 6th as a snitch, and he simply refused. And therefore, they have used legal hocus pocus to say that the pardon does not apply to him. It does. He was moved. They refused to release him. He was removed from the D.C. gulag this morning at 5:15 a.m. They will not tell his lawyer or his family where he's been taken. We don't know whether he's been moved to a facility in Philadelphia or a facility in Oklahoma. He is certainly covered by the pardon issued by President Trump. It's a great piece at the Gateway Pundit up about it. I urge people to go look at. So as my final thought here, pray for justice for Jeremy Brown. I pray we got to leave it there, John. God bless you. It's great to be with you.
Roger, we'll see you next week, brother. Be well.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for being with us here today on the Great America Show. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Same time, same place. Until then, may God bless you. May God bless America, and may God bless the great Lou Dobbs.